success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, Road to Growth listeners. Oh, it's a tongue twister. We have Reena. I just was on her podcast. This is back-to-back podcast. Her podcast might be maybe a month or two after this podcast, but it's called Better Call Daddy. You know what? In my office, there's a lot of individuals that are bi or opposites, the same sex, and all that kind of stuff. And so when I Better Call Daddy, I was like, oh, this is a platform for LGBT. Huh? Interesting. And then you go, oh no, it's not. It's about father situation and things like that. But that was actually, I don't think I told you that was the first thing that popped up. I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, Daddy.
I get all kinds of reactions to the title, but actually, Daddy is a really good SEO word.
Oh, is it? Yeah. But yeah, no, it was great. So when that comes out, please guys go subscribe or even go now. Better Call Daddy. There's probably some other ones that are really great on there, but we're not. Well, I guess we are going to be talking about that. But anyways, thank you, Renee, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I guess give me the idea. If you had to tell someone what's the elevator pitch for Better Call Daddy, and what you do, I guess, for a living.
Yeah, so the elevator pitch for Better Call Daddy is that I actually do call my dad every day that he's available. That's right now he's traveling overseas. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do without not being able to reach him? But I am, midlife, mom of 4 kids, 16, almost 17 and under. And I got my start in the television industry. My very first job out of college was Jerry Springer. A lot of people are like, Jerry. I went from intern to producer on that show, and really that laid out the ground for everything I loved doing, from casting guests to working in production to learning post-production, and now producing my own show, the Better Call Daddy show, where I get to cast the guests, share the stories with my dad like a good daughter does, and then get my dad's intergenerational perspective at the end of every episode. So I'm having a blast.
So, okay, let's talk about then. Let's rewind. I always love asking the question. Young Renee, did she have aspirations to be in a podcast host, being a producer? Was that her goals of interviewing people or doing things like that when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, I actually did love to perform for my parents. I used to put on little performances for my parents and grandparents. I grew up in Kentucky. Very family oriented. I had, my parents, all 4 grandparents, and many great grandparents in the area. It's actually crazy. I feel like that's a big part of my story, though. And I would line them up on the couch and sing for them and lip sing for them, and I would get applauded for that. My grandfather did the lights on Broadway in New York, and he was always very enamored by the entertainment industry, and my dad kind of always wanted his own show. I don't know if I wanted to be an actress or anything, but I had a love of the arts, and I ended up going to a youth performing arts school in high school. I didn't get in on my first try. I actually had to take voice lessons and get formally trained for 4 years all through high school, which is interesting because that was really the first place where I learned that you could turn a no into a yes. I went in there with this false confidence and just sang something off the radio, and they're like, oh, you have to be able to sing in a foreign language. You need to actually know how to read music. Do you know any of the note names? I'm like, no, but I'll learn. So now as a mom and seeing my daughter start piano lessons, I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a love of mine and something that I need in my life, and it's something that lights me up. So you asked, did I want to be an interviewer? I don't know if I wanted to be an interviewer, but I was definitely a socialite. I wanted to be a part of lots of different groups. Maybe a chameleon kind of.
So so you got rejected. What was it internal? Was it a family member? What drove you to actually go, no, I want to be here?
My dad, actually,
Okay.
my dad went to the head of the music department and was like, my daughter is kind of like an outside horse. He compared me to the Kentucky Derby. He was like, she might start from behind, but if you show her the process, she'll stick to it and she'll finish in the front.
Oh
And
wow.
so he was like, who is the music teacher that you guys use for the school? And I'm willing to get her the lessons. So there was a teacher, her name is Laura Lee Duckworth, and she was part of the Louisville Academy of Music. And I took her all of the music that I needed to learn. And every single week I worked with her on how to, read the new music and sing it a cappella and how to pluck out the music on the piano. Even though I didn't really stick with the piano as much, I did learn enough where I could play out all the music and kind of keep up. And I was surrounded by people that honestly were better than me. And I always felt like they were better than me. And I never really sang out, I think because I knew I didn't get in that first time, but I just kept at it. Like, I was like, oh my God, my dad went to bat for me. Like, he thinks I can do it. He stuck himself out. I'm going to do it. And so I did. Trust me, there was many times I wanted to quit and many times that I was like, oh my God, I'm not good enough to be here. But sometimes when you surround yourself by the best, and I really was surrounded by unbelievable talent, it starts to rub off on you a bit. And so after 4 years of that program, I ended up on the last day, they have like a bunch of colleges come to the school and you can like audition for a bunch of different art schools. And I've told this story before, but I went to school with Nicole Scherzinger of the Pussycat Dolls. She's now been on The Voice and she's made it to Broadway. She's been unbelievably successful. I hope she hears this one day. She took me into the music closet and was like, Reena, like today is the day. She was like, it's time to sing out. Like I've seen you stick out this program for 4 years. And she sat in the front row and she bobbed her head and kind of affirmed me. And I looked at her and I sang to her. And I got 2 offers to 2 small art schools. And honestly, I went with the one that wanted me more because I wanted to be wanted. And I ended up getting a full ride to the University of Charleston, West Virginia. And I went there for my first 2 years of college. And it was honestly like not even as hard as the high school that I went to. And so then I ended up transferring to Purdue because I kind of wanted more. I wanted more opportunity. And I was a dual major of vocal music and sports med. And they had a really good sports med program at Purdue. And I met somebody who was in the program at that school. And they were kind of like, hey, if you really want to do sports med, you should be in like a Big Ten school. So I ended up transferring. And then what's so funny is the classes were way harder at Purdue. It was like a rough rude awakening. And I went from having all A's to getting my first C and needing tutoring. And I saw some pretty brutal injuries working there. And I switched my major to communications and broadcasting and got a job at the radio station on campus. And then again, like found something that I loved doing. I was like, oh, wow, I can drop in music and edit these news stories and record myself and get creative. And I was like, I love this.
So you had, well, you're going for, I guess, 2 degrees. Was there, so the reason why I'm, I guess, asking this question, I was a business and mass comm major in college. And like the business was more like the practical one, but the mass communications, I enjoyed basically being in front of a camera, doing that kind of stuff, right? So it was like
Yeah.
the enjoyment of it. But the other one was like, well, this is what's going to probably actually make me money in the future, right? So you had the 2 majors. Was one of them for one reason, one for the other reason, or what was going on there?
100%. Yeah. I was like, I love to sing, but I honestly I loved being a part of a choir and I loved like the resonant sound that created. And I loved being a part of the production, but I didn't so much love like being solo. I had like stage fright. I still like the whole like speaking in front of large crowds things kind of freaks me out. That's why I think I like the podcasting medium and like the radio medium because you can talk to somebody one-on-one and you don't really realize how many people are listening. So yeah, I feel like I have a love of the arts and I gravitate towards the musical theater types and the creative types, but yeah, I felt like getting a bachelor's of science probably would have led to more business
That makes sense.
opportunity.
So so you graduated from Purdue. When does the Jerry Springer come about? Reducing for them.
Yeah, so I worked at an NPR station on campus for 2 years, and that
Sure.
led to me getting an interview at WGN in Chicago. And then I didn't get that. I drove up there and I had like this interview, and I thought it was great, but they didn't have an opening or I didn't get it. And then while I was up there on that interview, I saw that Jerry Springer was looking for interns. It was literally in the same courtyard. Like I saw a flyer like on the bulletin board at the radio station. And so I walked over to NBC Tower and was like, I'm here to meet with the intern coordinator, might as well. And he asked me when I could start. It was crazy. Like I ended up starting there 2 weeks later, and it was completely just like, having your eyes wide open. And
What do you learn from? I mean, because Jerry Springer was probably, kind of changed the game a little bit. Reality TV, right? So what did
he was the beginning of reality TV. Like that was one of the most exciting chapters of my life, to be honest. It was my first job out of college, and I went from making $0 to $80,000 in 1 year. I went from making no money as an intern and just working like 80 to 100-hour weeks and taking the guests around town and entertaining them and making sure they got to the studio on time and like figuring out how to book a story and kind of like what the executives were looking for and what to say on the phone, and just like being a sponge of all the people that were around me. Like, what were they saying? How were they getting people? What did the executives want them to bring? What were the stories that were making the crowd go wild? It was just the craziest chapter.
How many? Were they mostly not transplants. Were they mostly fake, or like, were they real, or people, or?
During the time that I worked there, I was really only going for real stories because the bread and butter of the show is just cheating stories. It was love triangles. It was like, okay, you've been married for 15 years and you're sleeping with the next door neighbor, or
and meet the next door neighbor.
Bring her out, yeah.
Okay, so you're there. And then what was the next step? What was the next step in your journey?
Yeah. So after that, to be honest, as you can imagine, you yourself have been a workaholic. You've had some chapters of that. After working 80 to 100 hours a week and smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day for a couple of years, you can't keep that up. So at the top of a third season of working there, one of my guests said to me, like, how can you live with yourself? And I was like, you know what? I never really thought about that. And I just decided to be done. And so after that, I ended up taking like a sales role at like Marcus Evans. I think it was 2 floors up at NBC Tower. I'd met somebody like at the bar, like in the building, and he offered me an opportunity. And that really wasn't for me. I was like selling like sporting event packages to like executives, when people were like corporate entertaining.
Yeah.
But it was like such a chop shop. It's like they were ringing the bell after every sale. And there just wasn't a lot of other TV opportunities in Chicago at the time. And so I packed up my stuff and moved to LA and pretty much started all the way over, which I don't even think everybody would have done. After I worked at Springer for a couple years, I was able to get into the Producers Guild of America because I had produced enough shows on that one show to qualify to get in. And so I started looking for like internal job postings within that organization and just applying to people that had worked in the industry for like 20 years, and like, I think I drove this one guy like just crazy, or like wore him out, where he was like, oh my God, you again? Like I applied to him so many times that, so he called me, and a couple of those kind of guys that they were working on every show I wanted to work on. And I finally just started like getting sassy in like my cover letters. And I'm like, Bill Clinton's no longer looking for a job, so this sounds like fun. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, you send him your resume and you get like crickets. Yeah. So I just started getting like crazy with like things I would reach out and say. And actually that one worked. This guy, Rusty Austin, he was a post-production supervisor and he had worked in the industry for years. And he was kind of like, hey, if you can produce Springer, you can do this. And he gave me a shot on Nanny 911 as a post-production supervisor, like supervising the editors overnight. So I worked third shift the first season, where I worked from like 7 at night to like 2, 3 in the morning. And I did that for an entire season. And then the next season, somebody left on the day shift. And so I got to switch to days, season 2 and 3. And that was amazing. But yeah, when I took that job as a post-production supervisor on Nanny 911, I didn't even know how to output a tape. Like I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to output a tape, but I knew how to follow instructions. Kind of like you were talking about, like there's processes in real estate. Like this guy had been doing the post-production process for 20 years. So he was kind of like, here's what each executive needs. Here's the format in which they need it. Here's the steps, to get them those deliverables, and call me if you have a problem. I'm like, amazing. So like he trusted me. He had a system. All I had to do was follow it. I had the phone numbers to call and I learned a ton. I worked on that show for, 3 seasons and had a couple other post-production gigs. I also just tried things, as a script supervisor. I was a field interviewer for MTV and VH1 and E, and went on the road and found like jobs that I was good at, things that I wasn't good at, things that I wanted to do, things I didn't want to do. And it was a blast in my 20s.
So what happened next? You're in your 20s, you're having a blast, you're jumping around from job to job. Then what happens next?
What happens next? I got on the internet and I don't know if you remember JDate, but it was like a Jewish dating site. And
okay.
Yeah, I was working third shift at Nanny 911 and my husband was on and he was like in a PhD program at Berkeley. And yeah, we started chatting on there. And then I knocked out the marriage chapter. I met him. We got engaged 4 months later. Like he drove down from Berkeley to LA and met me in Venice Beach. And then we got married 4 months after that. So got married, had 3 kids in 5 years, and then kind of tippy-toed my way back into actually working a little bit. Like while the kids were in preschool, I got into doing research for Court TV. I had a contact back in LA and she needed help like casting. So we had moved back to my hometown for a little bit. And I did casting at all the courthouses in Kentucky and Indiana. And then when we moved to Chicago, I was able to go to 6 courthouses there. And that's how I got into like working in court TV, is that, anybody that files for a small claims case, like if you're working on one of these court TV shows, all of those cases are like open to the public. And so I would go through all the cases and I would find the good ones and I would scan them and send them back to LA. And then that led to me working on casting for Divorce Court and Hot Bench and America's Got Talent. I really feel like, when I started off at Springer, people were like calling in the 1-800-96-JERRY number. Like that's how we found all of our stories. But towards the tail end of me leaving, we started getting internet leads. Like, if you're in a love triangle, call this number. If you're, hate your mate, call this number. So we had like 8 different numbers that you could call. And then we were getting like internet leads for that too. And casting really went that direction where people like undiscovered talent were being discovered on YouTube. Like I remember getting somebody through the first round of America's Got Talent just because she had shot her singing with, her uncle like in her kitchen, and she had like a YouTube following. I interviewed a guy on my podcast too that like he got like 100 views on one of his YouTube videos, but the right person saw it, and then he ended up like going on tour. What was that? I forgot. Color Me Bad. He went on tour with Color Me Bad, and there was like this 80s tour thing that happened for like 10 years. And it was like a YouTube video of him singing, and it had like 100 views on it. So I just saw that like casting has changed and like personal branding has changed. And if you like create your own following or your own brand or, your own partnerships, you can make your own show.
So you were not working for basically 5 years, right? Raising your kids, kind of going through all that stuff. Then what basically pushed you, I guess, to actually start kind of getting back in the workforce?
I think just like networking and talking to other people that were like able to do both. I think having my first kid, I was just overwhelmed by it. It's funny because I had worked on Nanny 911 and seen like hundreds of hours of footage of like, how to get your kids in routines and like how to be on the same page with your spouse. I'm like, I clearly learned nothing. All of these books and all of these tips and, like doing it yourself is not easy. Every kid is different and every kid reaches milestones at different times. And I had a big personality type A kid that overtook me. I didn't have a babysitter until he was like 18 months old. Yeah. And then the second kid came like when he was like 2.5. And I was like, okay, I've starting to kind of like gotten some normalcy back. And like, I need babysitters. I want to like tiptoe back into working a little. Like, I feel like that would make me a happier mom.
So you're kind of doing like part time. I'm not sure how many hours, but you're doing the work. And then when the idea come about for actually starting your own podcast?
Okay, yeah. So there were a couple steps in between with that. I had met a guy on LinkedIn, and he had a podcast. This was like 7 years ago.
Okay.
His name is Greg Johnson, and he was a recruiter, and he was doing another podcast with Sean Hervey. They were both recruiters, and they were kind of using it as like a lead gen to their recruiting business. And what was interesting about me and Greg is like we had the same birthday, we got married around the same time, we had the same kids, the same number, like we both have 4 kids. We just had a lot in common. And then when he found out that I love to cast, he was like, hey, maybe I should expand who I'm interviewing on my podcast. Do you think you could find me some interesting guests? I was like, I would love to do that. So it started off and I was like helping him cast just interesting people kind of like outside of his circle of friends. And then he was like, would you ever be interested in co-hosting and like popping on with your perspective? And I was like, oh, that'd be fun. So it kind of like got back to like my love of radio. So that's really just how it started. I started, helping him with casting, and then I co-hosted his show and we did like 20 episodes together. But when he had his 4th kid, like his wife was kind of having some postpartum stuff and he stopped down his show. And then I was like, darn, I kind of miss doing that. So then I ended up working for a couple other podcasters, helping them with casting, helping them with events, helping them with sponsorships around their events. And I was able to get them some huge guests, but they already had like big followings. And I feel like if you have a big following, you're able to kind of reach some of those harder to reach people. But again, it was like once I started like, being a coach of one of their coaching programs and booking them like Howard Schultz and Barbara Corcoran and these big name celebrities, I was like, if I can do it for them, why can't I do it for myself? I've learned how to put it all together. I know how to market it. I've reached out on other people's behalves. I've run Facebook groups. I've been a coach in different coaching programs. These are some elements that could probably work for me too.
So you had the idea, right? Because you see basically you're getting these people. And then when did like that spark come? Okay, I'm actually going to do this. Was it like pretty immediate, or was it like a year, 6 months, or how long of a time frame from the
I think it was probably a year after working for Kathy Heller. What's interesting about helping her put together like that 350 person event with like 15 sponsors and me booking her all those big guests. My dad was in California, like on a consulting project during the event that I was helping her produce while I was 7 months pregnant with my last kid, who's now 6. And he was like, because I'd had a couple miscarriages before. So he was like, I'm going to stay in town and like help you set up all the sponsor tables and, move the chairs. My dad's like, my guy. And so he stayed just to like help me with that event for a day. And we like hung out and, I didn't need to party and do the red carpet thing after. I was just like, oh, I just want to go put my feet up at the end of this. But yeah, I was just like, I'd go to lighting conferences with my dad because that was the industry that he was in. And he'd come to, events that I was working on. And he's just always who I call. And the fact that he always kind of wanted to be like that Mr. Rogers guy. Like he's just a character. So I was like, if I'm going to do a podcast with anyone, like somebody who's not going to back out on me, it was him. Like I knew that he'd be on board for it. And to be honest now, like it's become my why. He was like, if you're only doing this podcast for me, that's reason enough to continue.
Is that like the biggest thing? I know you said it's your why is basically to build that connection with him and kind of have something you kind of look back on and pass on to your kids, or? Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm in my 40s. Like how many other like women or people in their 40s, like do a project with their parents for 5 years. Like I've interviewed over 450 people. He's listened to every one of those interviews and weighed in on them. That's a hell of a commitment.
Oh, for
and
sure.
It's made us both great. It's made us both better. Like in the beginning, I just thought, oh, I'll share my daddy's wisdom with the world. Like I love his advice. Other people are going to love his advice. But what it's turned into is like other people sharing their life experience with us and like us being able to avoid some pitfalls because of the pitfalls that other people are saying, hey, don't do this.
You said you're making money off the podcast?
Well, some of the ways that I've made money are, there's brands that I've worked with that I do some affiliates through. And, some people pay me to do like in-person shoots for them where I'll like rent a studio and I'll research them. I'll read their book. I'll do a professional interview with them and package it more of like a branding piece. I love those actually. And then it's also led to, companies like wanting me to produce their in-house podcast. I had one healthcare client that I had for 3.5 years where I would script it for them, sit on the recording, edit it, and give it back to them ready for broadcast.
So do you for, I guess, people listening that are either looking to start a podcast or a platform, or they have a platform and they're looking to monetize it? Do you like every year, are you starting out with saying, okay, how am I going to make some money off of my platform or leverage the platform to do it? Or what does that look like when you're game planning? Or is it just simply I'm walking down this road right here and anything that pops up that looks good, let me dissect it and see if I'm going to take it, I guess.
Honestly, it's more of that. Like, okay. I didn't go into it saying like, oh, I'm going to create a podcast so I can make money. And actually, I think a lot of people do that. They're like, let me figure out a way to monetize this before I start it. If that's your outlook, like, it's a long road. You know what I mean? But yeah, it can lead to opportunity. And I will say that like opportunities keep presenting themselves. And that is what keeps me going. Cause I'm like, wow, like last month I was on vacation with my family and there was a guy that came on my show in 2022 and he's like, hey, I have an iHeart show now. I would love to bring you into the studio. I was like, amazing. And then, I've been with Podbean for 5 years and they started interviewing creators and they're like, we'd love to feature you. I'm like, that's a huge spike. And then, Headliner app, I love their tool. And I reached out to them because I subscribe to their newsletter and they're constantly looking for feedback and I use their tools. And I was like, I saw that they had a podcast. So they ended up featuring me and in their newsletter. And I now, I've done ads with them. It's led to so many amazing things. I feel like it's made me better at podcasting, better at coaching, just an all around better person.
There was a person that I interviewed a while back, and I'm always so bad when I just remember the gist of different stuff, but they were like, my goal, my aspiration, I think was to go to the Olympics, I think it was. And so they reached out to everyone in their database with the one goal, like, who should I know in your book or your phone that basically I should talk to about this goal of mine, and basically end up getting to the Olympics and helping out with like American Express like that. But like, it sounds like for you, I mean, it's not like these opportunities are coming directly to you. You know that you want opportunities, and when they come about, you're almost asking these people, hey, is there anything I could do for you? Right? Is that kind of like what's going on? Or are they actually coming to you and saying that I need your help? I mean,
yeah, no, people come to me and say, hey, yeah, I need your help. It's crazy. I met a girl today and after I just went to this networking event. It's called Cup of Joey. They're all over the city and there's like, entrepreneurs and mompreneurs and creatives. I love going to stuff like that just to like mix things up. And she was like a software developer turned soap maker. She might even be watching this right now because we just connected on LinkedIn. And she was like, what's the dream? What's the longing? Like, if you could do anything, what would it be? And I'm like, it's really just kind of like a glorified version of kind of what I'm doing. I love to interview people live. I love to read people's books and like ask them questions about their books and do like formal interviews. And she was like, would you ever want to like set up at a conference? Like, I make soaps and I do team building exercises in Microsoft about how creating soap can lead to storytelling and team building and like a really great exercise. And she's like, would you ever want to like interview people in the soap industry? I have a conference coming up. I was like, I would love that. And then she's like, well, how much would it cost for like a 3-camera shoot at, a conference all day? And then I told her kind of like what that would entail and how we could do it. And she's like, I'm going to ask the conference. I'm like, I love stuff like that. So it's just telling people what you want to do, what you're passionate about, and like, how can that fit into what they're doing?
Okay. When I was interviewed on your platform, you talked about, I think when we first started, before when the camera went, about basically loneliness, how you deal with loneliness. And then this one, someone asked you at another networking thing of what's your dream? These seem like very deep questions, right? Not surface level questions. So how are you presenting yourself, I guess, is the best way to actually get these conversations going so deep, so early on?
That's a great question. To be honest, it's so crazy. But when you're just like, hey, I love interviewing people. I've interviewed over 450 people. I like talking to daddy's girls, inspirational fathers, anybody with a little daddy drama. I have a podcast with my dad, like a good daughter does. It's like the more of these like keyword things that you say, then people associate you with those things. So actually the girl that I was talking to that's a soap maker, she had a baby strapped to her. I was like, I remember when I had a baby strapped to me and I was casting divorce court, so we bonded over the baby thing. And then turns out she's a daddy's girl. I was like, oh yeah, daddy's girls get each other, so it was just relating like that. And then she told me that she's actually working on kind of like pitching different TV shows. She's like, I'd love to talk to you about that. So it's just sharing with people and making your story around what you want to be doing and what you love doing and what you're passionate about. So saying like, I worked in TV, I love TV, I went to a music school, I love creative types. So and then if you are that, how can our skills complement each other?
So you're basically saying your elevator pitch, what I do, who I do it for, and why I love it. That's kind of a simple, I know it's a really simple way, but I mean, I think for most people that are working on their elevator pitch, I think those are 3 key takeaways right there. If you're working on it, figure out those 3 things, and that could be probably huge.
It's so crazy. Yeah. You asked me, like, how did that guy ask me such a deep question? He was like, I am married to a woman who's a venture capitalist and she does really well. And we have 2 young children. And to me, being in my children's life is like a big priority of mine. And right now, with our financial situation, I can stay home with my 2 little ones. And he was like, but do you know how hard that is as a dad? He was like, it's lonely. And he brought that up to me because of the dad piece. And then I said to him, I was like, wow, I'm like, that's such a good question. And I've actually interviewed someone who was a loneliness expert. I'm going to ask her your question of like what to say to somebody who feels lonely. And I'm going to get back to you with her response. And I did already. Like I literally reached out to the loneliness expert. Her name is Uni Taratini. And I reached out to her on Instagram and I told her the story and she was like, please share with him. When people feel lonely, it's because they're longing. And also kind of like what you said in your response, they want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, and maybe they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So I was trying to think of the best way of asking this question, because I think it's one of the first things we talked about in this podcast was your goal was to go to that school. You got denied, but your father basically stepped in, right? And basically forced the school into to bring you on, right? Talking through. So let's say you have another hurdle at today, right? Something similar to that hurdle right there, and you get rejected. What's your process now? I'm assuming it's not going to your father.
Oh no, I still call him. Okay.
So what happens? What's that process look like now?
Look, another challenge that I recently faced that I called my dad about was, kind of not knowing how to navigate private school, that I might not see eye to eye with some of their policies. But the truth is that, sometimes policies are set in stone and sometimes policies have wiggle room. Right? So, what's even crazy? I tried to get my dad invited to a meeting with the school that I send my kids to. And they're like, no, we don't allow dads on the phone. I'm like, why not? He's like a good buffer. He's a good in between. I want to hear his perspective. They said no. So I had to then take notes and kind of deliver my perspective on how that meeting went. And now I'm sitting with and not 100% sure on, whether I want to continue to send my kids to private school, whether I want to homeschool, whether I want to try public school after we've been sending to private school, like all the way up. Yeah. But yeah, I run everything by my dad. I feel like he has a lot of worldly advice and we don't always agree. He pushes back on things. And another thing that you and I talked about is like, sometimes he doesn't remember, or we remember differently. But yeah, I think it's good to get other people's perspectives when you're stuck.
Do you bounce ideas? I mean, you can see yourself. Do you bounce ideas off of your husband too? Like the same way?
Oh my God, I love that you asked that, because I think daddy's girls not only like my siblings, I think, are even a little bit jealous of my relationship with my dad because I'm the oldest and I'm like
Yeah.
so much my father's daughter. But also, I think, yeah, my husband's like, Jesus, like, how many times are you going to call your dad? Like, ask me. Yeah. No, I do ask my husband for advice, but a lot of times too, like, he's, doing the 9 to 5er and holding down the fort and like working so hard. And I don't want to like drive him freaking crazy. And I think that not everything can you ask a colleague, not everything can you ask your spouse. A lot of things you can't ask even sometimes your best friend. And it's nice when you have a parent that there's not much you can't ask.
No, I think it's, very true. At least you're allowing yourself to look at the problem from someone else's eyes, I guess, right? Yeah.
It can be a mentor, and you know what else? It can even be yourself. Like if you don't have that dad, if you don't have that friend, then you got to do some self-development.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, so thank you, Renee, for being here on the Road to Growth podcast. I'm gonna just one last question. If you were talking to someone today that wanted to start a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And make it something, not to monetize, but just to make it something, right?
Yeah.
What is there like a roadmap, like a month roadmap, a year roadmap, or a day roadmap that would basically allow them to at least go on the right path, I guess?
A couple like quick pointers that I always say is, one, before you jump into like doing your own show, I think guest on somebody else's show. I think get comfortable on the mic. And then once you've guested on some shows and you're like, yeah, I like doing this, I like telling my story, I feel pretty comfortable doing it, then I would say like practice recording either yourself solo, telling your story, or interviewing somebody who is going to give you some grace. So whether that's your dad or your sister or your college best friend or somebody that you've done business with, somebody who you have like an easy time talking to, where it's not like you're pulling teeth for an interview. Do 10 of those. And then probably 1 out of the 10 is going to be something that you can air.
Well, and also too, even if you just or on other people's podcasts or even interviewing, you probably get an idea too of what you actually like talking about. And because for you have a very unique structure to your podcast where your father listens to them and then gives his interpretation of how they went, I guess. Right.
Yeah. He synthesizes my thoughts. Like some people at the end of their podcast, and kind of like what you just did was you're like, okay, so here's how you network. Here's how you get people to understand your why and how you operate and what you do for work. So you were able to synthesize my thoughts. But yeah, after my dad hears my interview, he like gives me all the takeaways. Like he's my summary, which is really nice. So I think, somebody who's considering a podcast, think about their why, like what's their motivator? What are they trying to get out of it? Who's going to be their cheerleader? Or, how many times do they want to release? Who are they looking to connect with? And who are the people that, they've had good experiences with, like customers, teachers, relatives? I would make a list maybe of even like 20 people that would be people that they'd like to have conversations with.
At what level is the best time for them to reach out to you if they're looking to actually bring on people to their platform and actually look at those kind of events? Is it early on? What's the best way if they're looking to bring you on, I guess?
I have like a podcast cheat sheet that I've kind of developed. And if people are kind of just like looking for, hey, what mics should I look at? What recording platforms should I look at? How can I edit this thing? Where do I find free music? All of that. So I do one-on-one coaching calls with people that like a little bit of hand-holding if they don't want to pay me to like do it fully for them. I just will meet with them a couple of times, and then in a couple of coaching sessions, you can be able to start your own podcast. But there's lots of people who do that. You can even learn that on YouTube. But I think it's helpful to collaborate with people that are 50 episodes in, collaborate with people that are 100 episodes in, collaborate with people who are 200 episodes in, right? You want somebody who's a little bit ahead of you, somebody who's been doing it for a long time. People are going to give you different perspectives.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
According to where they're at.
Yeah. And then even basically, like we talked about, the perception of where they're at, or what they think about you or how much time they're going to give you. I mean, but that I think there's a lot of great nuggets right there. Because I mean, I've had a lot of people that have listened to this platform and then they reach out to be like, oh, I'm looking to start a podcast. And I go, I'll give them the overview of it or maybe set some time away, but I don't have anything like you're talking about there. So if anyone's listening right now and they're looking to start a podcast, please go in the show notes and reach out. I mean, that could be, what does it really
It'll
hurt?
save you a lot of time, because even though it's all available on YouTube, you know, you want somebody who's just going to tell you, you know, here's the 3 platforms you should look at. Here's the 3 mics, you know, beginner, middle, expensive. You know, here's the free version. Here's the expensive version. Here's the upgrade. And here's all the places that you go, versus you trying to like compare it all yourself.
Yeah.
But it is doable. And honestly, like Podbean, you can get 30 days free and you can just start recording on there. Riverside, Zoom, whatever you're comfortable doing. But there are plenty of mics that are under $100. Definitely get a mic. It makes a huge difference in the audio quality, and then you'll spend a lot less time cleaning it up. But, you know, there's people on Fiverr too that will edit a basic edit for $50 if you don't want to do that aspect.
Yeah, it gets easier and easier every day, just like the barrier of entry for realtors.
Exactly.
Bring it full circle right there.
Make your dream come true. I honestly feel like everybody should have a podcast because it's such a learning experience and it will help you leverage your relationships.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for being on the platform. Hopefully everyone listening got some great information. Please go in the show notes if you're thinking about it. I mean, it might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, it might be 6 weeks from now that it might be tomorrow that you're looking to start it, right? But it doesn't hurt just to go in the show notes and just check it out. And please go listen to the podcast that I was on, and it'll probably be out in the next month or 2. But thank you guys. Please subscribe, please share, and go find Better Call Daddy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Vinny.